What's going on, family? Welcome to another episode of the Traffic Sales and Profit Show. My name is Lamar Tyler, and I'm your host. And if you are a Black entrepreneur looking to grow and scale your business or looking for ways to grow and scale your wealth, you're in the right spot. And today I'm excited because I have my real estate mentor and TSP Mastermind alum, right? Kito Johnson in the house. Kito, for one, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Glad to be here.
And I wanted you to come because when we talk about wealth creation, real estate is an important piece of that puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And we know for Ronnie and myself, and you know, we probably on a path that a lot of entrepreneurs watching will be on,
Mm-hmm.
where they generate money in their business,
Mm-hmm.
and then they start to look for ways and places to put that money so that they can create wealth,
Mm-hmm.
pass down wealth, protect wealth,
Mm-hmm.
lower taxes, and so many other benefits of real estate I'm sure we can talk about today.
Absolutely.
And you are the perfect person to have that conversation with. So again, thank you for coming in.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
All right, so now you have extensive experience when it comes to residential, when it comes to commercial, when it comes to probably wholesale, long-term holds, fix and flip, like all of it.
Mm-hmm.
But where did this actually start at with you?
Started, the beginnings of it really as a kid growing up and watching my father in entrepreneurship. And he was a builder and had a general construction company. So that's the foundation for me. But right out of high school, I began to develop a passion for real estate. And I stumbled into a deal. At the time, I was just looking for a place to move in, but it happened to be a fixer-upper. And long story around all of that, but I moved into the property and ended up doing some renovation over the next 6 months or so. And then fast forward a year and a half after living there, I came across a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and read that book. And, you know, as I say, the rest is history.
And how old were you at this time?
I was 20.
So 20. So found that first property.
Yep.
Stumbled into a deal, as you say, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you fixed it up. So what happened once you fixed it up? Did you stay in it? Did you move? Did you rent it out? What happened with that first?
Yeah, so I fixed it up. I was looking for a place to live, right? At the time I was engaged and prepared to get married. And so I was looking for a place to move from my parents' house into, you know, to start a family in. And came across this property and that needed work, but the work didn't really scare me because, again, I grew up around it.
Mm-hmm.
And went to get traditional financing for it and found out that I couldn't qualify for traditional financing because it was in such disrepair. So I ended up negotiating, you know, what I now know is a lease purchase, but I negotiated with the seller to give me 6 months to renovate it. And once I renovated it, then I would get the loan on it. And that's what we did. 6-month lease purchase, bought the house, lived there another year and a half. Read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and then after that, you know, just began to duplicate myself over the next 24 years.
So let me ask you this. So you get that first one, you know, year and a half later, you move, you sell it?
A year and a half later, moved.
Okay.
Yeah, moved, and for capital gains reasons, I moved, rented it out for 2 years, and then sold it.
Okay.
And so, you know, taking advantage of the capital gain law so that I could walk away with profits tax free. So that became.
Could you explain that too, in case somebody's listening may not know what you're talking about?
Yeah. So the capital gain law says once you buy a property, if you live in it as your primary residence, when you prepare to move from that place, when you sell it, you could potentially take the profits tax free. You had to have lived in it as your primary residence for 2 of the previous 5 years.
Okay.
Right. And so my pattern was to live in a property, and I'd live there for a couple of years, renovate it while I'm there, increase the value. I'd then move out and then rent it out for another couple years, and then I'd list it and sell it and take the cash tax free.
Okay. And then invest that into something else.
And then invest it in, and then roll that into the next property. So At 44 years old, I just moved to my 11th primary residence.
So you're still doing this?
Still doing it. Now, the last 3 times, including this time, I say I'm done. I'm not moving anymore. Right. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's been 11 times over the last 24 years.
It sounds like it's a way of life at this point. So.
It is. And I enjoy it.
Awesome. All right. So you do that. So how do we get from that first property to you actually moving full time into real estate? Because at that time, did you have another business? Were you like working a regular corporate job? Like, or like at what point did you say, all right, like real estate is how I want to spend my life?
Yeah. Yeah. So at that time I was working, my father and I had a construction company.
Okay.
And so he was managing everything exterior out in the field. We specialized in, concrete, curbs and gutters, slabs, that kind of thing, and did a lot of work for municipalities around Metro Atlanta. So I was running the office and did that for quite a few years. And this is probably a conversation for another show.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot through the mistakes that my father made. Mm. And long story short, we ended up losing that company or just closing the doors to the company. And that's when I pivoted into where my other passion lied. And that was in real estate and working with others.
And how did that look for you in the beginning? Because you are a broker now. Was that, you just doing straight investments? Was that you becoming an agent? Because I see so many people have so many different entries. I think this one thing that's cool about real estate.
Yeah.
It's like it's 50 million different entry points of how people get to where they are.
Yeah. And that's a good point to make even now, because a lot of times people hear me talk about investing in the types of portfolios that we've been able to build and so forth. And the assumption is, I got to get my real estate license to do that, which is absolutely not true. And so for me, I was an investor for 5-6 years before I ever got a real estate license. And the thing that caused me or pushed me to get the license was I've always enjoyed, assisting other people. I've always enjoyed the teaching and helping somebody see a light bulb go off, right? So at that time, and the landscape is much different now, but at that time, 24 years ago, the deals that were done were considered on market, right? And so they were listed by real estate agents. So I was mentoring and helping other people find deals that were listed with another agent. And after doing that for a few years, I thought, well, I could be the one making the commission on the deal, right? So that's what pushed me to get my real estate license and then ultimately my broker's license. But I started as an investor. And that's, the natural ebb and flow, having been an investor first and then becoming an agent and then ultimately a broker and starting a company, a brokerage, is that, the majority of our clients are investors or up and coming investors. So that's always been the niche of my real estate brokerage.
All right. So I know some of your personal story, right? So I know a lot of people look from the outside and they say, hey, I've seen Kito, I've heard him teach, I've heard him on Clubhouse, right? In the weekly room he does on Clubhouse.
Yeah.
And they may say, all right, well, he wouldn't understand what it's like when you're just getting into real estate or when you're just doing this, or he probably made all this money and it's always been great. But you ran into some problems when the actual housing market crashed out. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was 2004, 2005, 2006, I was doing what I felt like was, moving in the right direction, building a portfolio, making passive income, everything that Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the book taught me to do. I felt like I was walking in that. And so by the time you fast forward to 2007 and the market starts shifting, in 2008, when I got to that point, I had acquired 17 properties. And coming out of the crash of '08, lost 15 of those properties. Wow. And when I say lost, in some cases it made sense to call the bank and say, hey, you can have it. In other cases, went to foreclosure. In some cases, we just barely sold them to break even just to get out. But coming out of 2008, I had gone from 17 properties to 2. And the 2 that were remaining was the home I lived in and the home that I inherited or that my grandfather had given me. And those were the 2 I refused to lose. And I learned so much through that time, which has played a big part in how I make decisions now, investing decisions. But I lost over $2 million worth of assets coming through the crash of 2008.
When that happened, what was your mindset? Was it that, okay, once I get through this, I'm gonna get it all back? Was it that I don't want to see no more real estate? Because I've heard people kind of face all those different types of things. Where was your mind at?
My mind was kind of vacillating, right? In one moment, I'm thinking, I don't want to do this again. But what I later realized was, it's not that I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do real estate again. I just didn't want to make those same mistakes again.
Okay.
Right. And unfortunately, it's a lot of outlets now. Like you mentioned, Clubhouse, like YouTube, list goes on and on and on. There are mentorship opportunities. Well, then that wasn't available for me, right? And so a lot of the things that I learned, I had to learn the hard way. And so coming through 2008, having made those mistakes, I used to look and feel bad for myself. Like, why was there never anyone around that I could lean on? And then I realized one day that I'm supposed to be the person that the next person can lean on. So I had to go through those challenges and make those mistakes so that I can be for the next person what in that time I never had or never felt like I had for myself.
Now, we're going to get into you kind of transitioning to, say, not just getting more properties, but also you being a teacher in a second. But before we leave this part, I want to talk about what happens when you lose those properties. So I know a lot of people from the outside looking in, it may not have been in real estate at that point, or maybe they were too young, or maybe just not investors at that point. They may be listening. They may be thinking like, well, how do you lose that? Like technically, how do you lose it? Because they're like, I don't want to make the same mistake that others have already done, right? They've already done that, so I don't have to do it.
Yeah.
But is it because the places aren't rented? Is it because the mortgage is too high? Is it like what exactly happened in your situation?
Some of all of the above, but the number one thing to sum it all up is the fact that I was over leveraged. At that time in the market. You could buy a house, even an investment property, with $0 out of pocket. At that time, it was common to do what's called an 80-20. You do two loans at one time, and you go to the closing table, and you got one loan for 80% of the purchase price, and then you got another loan in second position for 20% of the purchase price. And so I did that multiple times over and over. So of the 17 properties, a lot of them I had leveraged well over 90%. And so now when I teach, I teach investing, the sweet spot is, 65, 70%. You don't want to owe more than 65, 70% of the value of the property. So go to the table with some cash out of pocket. And that's what I didn't necessarily do at that point. So I had an 80-20 loan, so by the time it was rented out, even at that point, it's barely cash flowing, if at all, right? Barely cash flowing. And so then the market shifts, so the market crashes, and people lose their income, right? So I was barely cash flowing, right? So one missed payment from a tenant makes a difference, right? So that was the biggest thing that I learned then not to do now, and that is, I believe in leverage. Leverage allows you to go farther, faster, but make sure that you're not over leveraged in your investments.
Hey, if you're listening, I want you to think about this. Our community needs you. So if I need you to grow your business, it's only one way for you to do it and make it happen, and that is with TSP Propel. TSP Propel is like Netflix for Black entrepreneurs. It's a go-at-your-own-pace self-study system of over 50 plus courses. In addition, we give you resources and templates to execute faster. And we're going to do monthly calls with my coaches to make sure you get everything you need and get your questions answered. For more information, visit www.tspropel.com. Okay, that's good. I'm so glad you shared with the audience, because I said, no, a lot of people, I find there's a lot of fear around real estate. I had Julian Gordon on. I'm sure you know Julian.
Yes.
Right. And we were talking about real estate, and he was talking about multifamily. And it was interesting. I told him, like, real estate is one of those things where everybody studies a lot of it, almost feel like maybe too much sometimes. But until you actually do it, I feel like even when I was like, I studied, and I done read so many books, took courses, sat in workshops, but you learn more on the first deal that I probably did in 20 years of reading and studying materials.
So very true.
So again, thank you for having this conversation, because I'm sure people learn a lot just from listening, and we want them to take action coming out of it. So you go through that crash. Like how long does it take you from that? 'Cause that's like what, 2008, 2009?
2008.
All right, 2008 to when you start acquiring properties again.
I took a break for about 3 years. And then when I came back into the industry, My pivot back into the industry was working more as a broker and helping acquire property for some institutional funds that were moving into town and buying up rental property here in the Metro Atlanta area. So that was my pivot back, working as a broker, analyzing those deals for those investors, and at that time, the team that I was working on, we were selling 150, 200 houses a month to this one
Wow.
hedge fund. And so that was my pivot back into the space. And, actually acquiring properties again personally, probably around 2013.
Okay.
Mhm.
And was that like a conscious decision, like, hey, I'm ready to get back in the game, or did it kind of naturally happen?
It just naturally happened. It just naturally happened because even before I started buying again personally, I started again training and equipping other people to do it.
Yeah.
And a lot of the deals that I've been involved in over the last several years have been deals that individuals that I trained or mentored in some way went and brought back to me for analyzation, and we partnered on them in some way or another. But that's really what pushed me back. I'm training other people how to do it, and they're going out finding deals. They're bringing them back to me. We're analyzing them together. And then ultimately, some of the deals just made sense to not pass on, right? And so as I began to make those decisions to buy and to acquire, it picked up momentum.
Now, I know that when I first met you, you were doing regular meetups of real estate education.
Yep.
No cost, just kind of pouring into the community, pouring into the local Atlanta network of real estate investors, of people that were, in the ecosystem around the city.
Right.
And they were coming in, they were connecting. It was great information. So you met a lot of both seasoned people and new people. What do you think are some of the misconceptions people have when it comes to real estate that kind of may slow them down and stop them from getting involved?
One, that they have to know it all before they get started.
That's good.
And the number one challenge by far that I've seen is, and you kind of alluded to it earlier, like there are a lot of avenues through with real estate that you can get involved in. I mean, there's the list, man. There's tax sales, and you can be a builder, you can be a flipper, or you can be a wholesaler, or hundreds of strategies, right? I mentioned the lease purchase strategy, where I got started. Just so many different strategies. And what I found from hosting those meetings or those trainings is people would come this week, and they'd say, this is what I'm focused on, because they had just gone to a class talking about that thing. So all of a sudden now they're a private money lender, right? Because they went to a private money lender convention, right? And then they come back to the meeting next month, and now they're doing tax liens. And every time they come, they tell me something different. And so by far the biggest challenge that I found is people in their quest to, when they feel like they need all the information, they just end up confused, because one minute they're looking at this strategy and the next minute they're looking at this strategy, and they never really stop to ask themselves, which is the strategy that makes the most sense for me where I am in my life right now.
So how do they determine it? How do they figure out, okay, and I think, I've heard you break it down before, and I think you had a great kind of perspective, because there's some people that have a lot more time than money. Like, I ain't got no money.
Yep.
I got all the time in the world, right? There's some people that have a lot more money than time.
Yep.
Like how do they kind of look through those lenses and try to figure out, like, maybe what part of real estate they should be looking into?
Yeah. So I mentioned there's a whole lot of strategies, but there are really three major strategies that, or three foundational strategies, I'd say, right? And from a residential perspective, right? There's wholesaling. There's fixing and flipping, what we see on HGTV, and then there's being a landlord, buying and holding property. And just like there are three main or core strategies, I think there are three core components that an individual has to ask themselves. And you mentioned it, like, what does my time look like? How much time do I have? How's my credit? And how much money do I have? Right? Time, money, credit. Those are the three questions that you have to be real with yourself about. And there's really no right or wrong answer to that, right? But based on how you answer those questions, how much time do I have? How much money do I have to invest? How's my credit? Determines which one of the strategies you start with. Right? And just because you start with a strategy doesn't mean that's the end goal, but which strategy is my entry into the field of real estate, right? And so that's one of the things I talk about a lot.
All right. So for people listening in that say, okay, this is good. I've been studying for a long time and I want to get started. What do you tell people like one of the first steps they should take?
One of the first steps is surround yourself with other people that are doing it, right? And very simple way to do it, regardless of what city you're in, go to meetup.com and look for somebody or some group, or we call them real estate investors associations. Or if you ever hear somebody say a RIA, right? That's the acronym for Real Estate Investors Association. Find a local RIA and connect with those individuals. A couple $100 a year, whatever the membership fee is, that will be the very first thing that I would tell somebody to do, because you get to meet other players in your area. You get a feel for what the strategies that are working currently. So that's where I tell people to start. And Clubhouse, you mentioned Clubhouse. There are a lot of Clubhouse groups that are talking about, real estate, and you can network and find people in your area also on an app like Clubhouse.
Is there a way, once they find people, is there a way that you kind of discern, all right, who's the real deal and who's not? Because I'm sure people come to you all the time and say, hey,
Yeah.
I'm an investor, or, I got this deal, or I'm trying to do this thing.
Yeah.
Like what's the lens you kind of look through to figure out, all right, is this person like a scammer, or are they real, or maybe they got the best intentions, but they're inexperienced.
Yeah.
The different things you have to kind of figure out.
Yeah, I mean, simple questions like, if they ask them what their focused strategy is right now. Like, what are you focused on? Do they stumble their way through that answer, or can they clearly articulate?
Well, they say real estate.
What about real estate, right? Where in real estate, And if they say real estate, they're not
the one.
They're not necessarily the one. They may be on the way to being the one, but they're probably not the one right now. What strategy is working for you now, right? What are you focused on right now? That's one question.
I love it. I love it. And we have a lot of entrepreneurs that watch the show. Like, why should they be interested in real estate in particular?
For the tax benefits. There are a lot of entrepreneurs, and I love real estate, right? And I'm passionate about it. It's my chosen vehicle to generational wealth and wealth creation. But what I also realize is there are a lot of people who make money outside of real estate, right? But what do you do with the money when you make it? Most of the highly successful people that I know, whether they made their money with real estate or not, they know and ultimately learn the value of using the vehicle of real estate to preserve their wealth, and as a way to build that wealth and ultimately pass on that wealth. And if you do it right, you pass it on with minimal, if any taxes, right? So for an entrepreneur who makes their money somewhere else, you need, in my opinion, you need to buy real estate so that you can offset your taxable income and reduce your tax liability. And real estate is one of the best ways to do that.
I love it. You talked about lowering tax liability. Something that keeps coming up on the show is we keep talking so much about how business is math. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I've learned about real estate is math.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We might just rename this the math show or something, right? Because we talk a lot of math on here. Mm-hmm. But, one of the things I learned from you and others is that, really to know whether a deal is good or not, you got to be able to break down the numbers. Mm-hmm. And you got to be able to look. So and even once you look at the numbers, then that's just a starting point to negotiate off of.
Right.
Because previously I would look at, I might see an opportunity come and might look at it and say, well, just based off the price, oh, that's too much. Mm-hmm. Or, based off of what I saw listed, oh, that's too much, but not realizing that there's always kind of wiggle room within there. Mm-hmm. And it's just a beginning point. Can you kind of speak to that or how you view that?
Yeah. So with real estate, everything is negotiable, right? And especially the market that we've been in over the last, year and a half, 2 years, everything is just rising, and values are moving really fast. But the truth is, whatever number you see listed there is just that. It's a starting point. It's that seller's hope, right? And while over the last several months they got their hope probably and then some, we'll see how things change and how things are impacted as the weeks, months, and the next year turns. But the reality is whatever number you see there is just that. It's a starting point. It's what they desire. But you can make an offer anytime, right? And one of the things too that I'll just make this point since we're talking about it. The whole concept or idea of appraisals, right? Or valuations. A lot of time people look at, Zillow.com and says that this estimate is this. Those estimates can be really high, and they can be really low. But at the end of the day, the question is, but the question of value becomes what is your goal or intent for the property? Because one strategy for one property might make sense at one price, whereas a different strategy might make sense at a different price. So kind of going back to what we said initially, right? What is the goal? What's the strategy? And then what price point makes sense for that deal based on what your intended use is.
I like that. Let me ask you, at this stage in your career, what kind of deals excite you?
Deals that I don't know like the back of my hand. I love the single family house. It's done wonders for me and my family. The single family house, the duplex, the small rental property in the urban neighborhood. But those don't get me excited anymore, right? I want to do much larger deals, development deals, spend more time on commercial. I'd like to focus more on some mixed use type projects. And that's where my focus and energies are going moving forward.
All right. I love it. And last but not least, let me ask you, for the people listening in, if you could leave them with one message, kind of get going and move forward today, what would that be?
Get started, right? Get started. So what does get started mean, right? For that individual, it could mean, looking up a meetup group like a RIA and doing that. It could mean, picking a book to help you determine which strategy makes sense for you, right? But do something as opposed to sitting on the sidelines saying, and my grandfather used to always, I don't care what the question was, Papa, can we go to Six Flags? Yeah, we'll go one of them days. Okay, I don't care what the question was. The answer was always one of them or one of these days, right? And I think a lot of people treat real estate, or not just real estate, but getting involved in something that they know would make a difference in their life. But because so many other things are going on, they look at those other endeavors and say, well, I'll do it one of them days, or one of these days, right? So get started, do something today that will move you closer to creating wealth and preserving wealth through real estate.
And that's good. I mean, it seems like one of those, a lot of things to talk about, I say, like now is the best time.
Yeah.
Because I noticed a lot of people that wish, 2 years ago when they thought about it,
yeah,
they would have got in 2 years ago before everything shot up, right? Or, people say, hey, back in 2010, I was thinking about it and I wish I would have got in then when the market had bottomed out.
Yeah.
So kind of like, it's no perfect time. It's just now, right?
The time is absolutely now. Yeah. And I've said this before, don't pull back or hold up because of the uncertainty that might be going on in the area right now, right? Just continue to press forward and move forward because the time is always now. So old quote that I've heard years ago, like, when is the best time to buy real estate, right? And the answer was yesterday, right? Well, when is the second best time? Today.
And should they be concerned at all about recession?
Not. My opinion is that if you are evaluating the deal properly and understanding the importance of not over leveraging, right? I've always said, you never want to be in a deal more than 70, 75%. Well, with the uncertainty that we're seeing now, you might want to say 65, 70%, right? So if you are not buying and if you're not coming out of pocket to a point that you are walking away with no cash reserves and that type of thing, and you're focused on not buying at the top of the market, then I think now is not the time to hold back. It's certainly invest, especially and too, the market, the area that you live in makes a difference too. There are some markets that are just not going to take a major hit, even with the recession, right? And so you need to know if you're in that market. I think Atlanta is one of them, but you need to know what's going on in your market.
What makes you think that about Atlanta?
Because there's still so much industry here. There's still a lot of, people are moving here for so many different reasons from all over the country. there's already a deficit in housing, right? And that number is growing worse every day, right? More and more people are finding themselves without a place to stay. And with the major corporations that are still saying, I want to make Atlanta my home, I just think the market is going to continue to thrive in some way. Not only that, but if you just look at the price points in Atlanta, sure, the prices are rising, but when you compare it to other major cities around the country, it's still relatively cheap, inexpensive to live in Atlanta. I mean, right close to everything that's going on when you compare it to a price in LA, or to a price even in some parts of Houston or Dallas, or to a price in New York. So I think Atlanta still has a lot going for it.
All right, so you heard that here from Kito. He told you, if you're thinking about getting started, guess what? Stop thinking about it and actually take action and make it happen. Kito, if they want to connect with you, if they want to learn more about what you do, if they want to work with you, they want to bring you on this amazing mixed-use development deal that they got, and say we want to tap Kito and get them into it, how can they contact you? Where can they find you at online?
You can find me everywhere online at KitoJJohnson.com, KitoJJohnson.com. Kito J. Johnson is my handle on all social media platforms. It's my handle on Clubhouse. And then also, I wrote a book called Real Estate Wealth, and kind of delve into the strategies that we mentioned, the top 3 strategies, and understanding where you are as it relates to your time, your money, your credit. And you can have that book free if you go to realestatewealthbestseller.com, realestatewealthbestseller.com, and you can grab the book free there. Just pay shipping.
All right, there you go. You have it. Make sure you go out and get a copy of the book. Make sure you read. On Traffic Sales and Profit, we are a community of readers because we want you to get a hold of the information. But then again, once you get the information, you have to make sure you implement. And then once you do, I want you to go online and tell Kito the episode on Traffic Sales and Profit show where you talked about real estate is the piece, the catalyst that I need in order to actually take action and make things happen. How many of you are saying, hey, again, I wish I got in a few years ago. I wish I got in a few years before that. This right now is the time that I don't want you to regret in the future. Make it happen. And you have officially just completed another episode of the Traffic Sales and Profit Show. We thank you for watching. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Traffic Sales and Profit Podcast. Don't forget to download and subscribe on your favorite podcast platforms. Also, visit us at www.trafficsalesandprofit.com/podcast. On that page, you'll have all the links to follow us on social, me at Lamar Tyler and the at Traffic Sales and Profit brand, in addition to information on our upcoming events, information on how to get a free copy of my paperback book, and more so that you can be the best entrepreneur possible. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next episode.